call this village board meeting in order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we are going to have a public hearing tonight on our use of cameras in public areas policy. And that will be open at 7. So if you have a comment about that, you'd like to speak at the public hearing at 7 relative to the camera policy, that would be the time. If there's other public comment, you're more than welcome to speak now. The village board has a long night in front of us, so I will ask that your comments be held to no more than 4 minutes. Right. And when you ask, please stand and give your name and address so that Jenna can record that. Thank you so much. You can announce it so it's on recording. So.
Okay. Celia Oxley, 10 Pioneer Street. I'm sorry, I timed it, but it's 5. I apologize for that.
All right. Well, we'll see how long it goes.
Okay. As you know, the February meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals reviewed an application for a special use permit for short-term rentals at 40 Lake Street and set a hearing for March 7th. After the meeting, conversations between neighbors of 40 Lake Street became a daily occurrence. Quickly, the conversations involved a large group of people who were conversing online several times a day. Before we knew it, the group was well over 50 people, many of which did not live near 40 Lake Street. The hearing set records for attendance and letters written, and the special use permit was denied. But the group continues to meet. Although we are pleased and grateful that the Zoning Board of Appeals denied the permit based on current zoning codes, the group sees area of the codes that could be tightened. The village government accomplished a great deal for the village in 2000 with the 2018 amendments to the codes in particular. We do not come to criticize. We wish to show some points that can be strengthened in order for the village to continue to enjoy those accomplishments. Incidental use. As you know, the Cooperstown Village Code 300-17.1 deals with transient rentals. Code 317.1B5 says, quote, incidental use. Short-term rentals shall be incidental to residential use in residential districts. The wording of this could allow for an unintended interpretation. Is the code saying that short-term rentals can be incidental to residential use of an entire district? The village of Cooperstown once lost a court case, because of a few badly placed words in the code. We propose the words in residential districts be moved to earlier in the sentence to read as follows. Short-term rentals in residential districts shall be incidental to residential use of the dwelling. Alternatively, the line could mimic the wording found in another section of the code to read as follows. Short-term rentals in residential districts shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling for residential purposes. So fire inspection, code 300-34C1 requires a parking plan, bear with me on this, to be approved before the issuance of a special use permit. And this makes sense. The Zoning Board of Appeals needs to review all aspects of the application before approval. The applicant is expected to demonstrate that parking will be adequate, appropriate, and not detrimental. A satisfactory fire inspection could be made a requirement of the application as well, just like the parking plan. That's why I bring the parking plan up. Why do we suggest this? Currently, the fire inspection becomes a condition of the permit after the granting of the permit. Time and time again, the Zoning Board of Appeals has been reluctant to place any condition on a special use permit because of the history of difficulties in enforcement, and this is understandable. However, if a satisfactory fire inspection is required with the application, then the enforcement difficulty is no longer an issue. Residency or occupation requirement, code 300-17.1B2 and 3 address the operator duties of the short-term rental. As you know, the operator shall be the owner of 50% or more of the property. 300-17.1B3A also states they must be a long-term occupant of the property. And in 300-84 definitions, it defines long-term occupancy as occupancy of a structure for 30 consecutive days or more. The definition doesn't give a time context, though, to the 30 consecutive days. When does that begin? When does that end? Or is it the 30 consecutive days every year? Or is it before the beginning of a short-term rental? It would be a shame to allow an unscrupulous person the opportunity to use the lack of specificity. Oh, I thought that was me.
Well, that's the 4 minutes.
Oh, I'm
I'll let
sorry.
you finish
I
up.
just- I-
And unless, Celia, if you just leave.
I will leave this. I will be
Yes.
happy to.
Yeah.
Okay. It would be a shame to allow an unscrupulous person the opportunity to use the lack of specificity of the definition to the applicant's advantage and the village's disadvantage. Dutchess County simply specifies that an owner must reside in the house for 9 months per calendar year. And Bill Waller will be talking about how another municipality handles it. So I'll be happy to read this.
Yes, with Janice, so that Jenna can have the comments.
Bill Waller, 66B, New York. The village zoning board of appeals, zoning boards, and everyone worked long and hard on the zoning law in 2018, focusing on tightening and clarifying the law in order to regulate the short-term rental market, blossoming in the village. Minor additions were made in 2019 and continuously even strengthen these regulations more and more. Now the board has an opportunity to clarify the regulations covering the riparian overlay district and special permits covered in section 324 and 316 and 17. If you decide to consider this, I would like the board to evaluate some other minor changes to further enhance and clarify the special permit process covering short-term rentals. But first, I want to speak about the riparian overlay district. This district covers the areas bordering the waterways and the lake within the village. I feel that the portion of this district that abuts the lake is of special need of protection and requires unique consideration. The runoff from this Lake Street area runs directly into Lake Otsego, especially from Willowbrook. Our lake is challenged enough by the runoff, especially from Willowbrook, that it needs special care. We certainly do not want any more contaminants contributing to more errant plants or algae. Besides the watershed challenge, the Lake Street Riparian Overlay District also is our lake's viewshed. This area is the primary lake viewing portion of the village that needs protection by limiting that which would deter the character of this unique and special area. The Lake Street area is also the location of many mixed brand and historic structures. To see these turned into businesses catering to non-village transients that have no stake nor appreciation for the history and special place that district has for us residents would be a degradation that would not be easily corrected. While debating any changes to the zoning law, I would like the board to also take consideration to clarify the definitions that are so important to the decision-making process, specifically the statements regarding need, owner occupied, as you heard, long-term occupant and incidental use, which you heard. In considering the term need, I know that New York state laws say that this cannot be a financial need, but we should all take a look at what is necessary to prevent somebody to operate a house just short-term transient rentals in a special district. This special area of a special district. I'd like the board to think about how this would fulfill a village need. Simply some language could require a demonstration of community need for a short-term rental in this riparian district. Currently, section 317, paragraph C, line 1, under need states that proposed use with the exception, it accepts home occupations, accessory dwelling units, and short-term rentals in that section. I'd simply suggest a change by not including short-term rentals in that exception. So in other words, someone coming up with a short-term rental in the riparian district would have to demonstrate a community need in fulfillment of our community plan and our community, what our community is going. This would be one simple way of taking a look at the proliferation of short-term rentals in the riparian district.
In a similar way, the term long-term occupant, this is something very interesting. We define it, of course, as 30 days or more. But many other states, including New York, talks about, it being your place of abode and your domicile for 184 days, because that's for tax reasons. But in Bellingham, Washington, curiously enough, they require for short-term rental occupancy as the owner, 270 days. And they have some other interesting rules, 95 days of rental only, no more than two people per bedroom. And another interesting rule, they require the owner of a short-term rental property to notify the neighbors, the people abutting the property, for who they're renting to and when they're renting it. Clearly, to prevent somebody from simply buying a home and converting it into a transient rental business, a strict residency requirement should be part of the regulations. We want our friends and neighbors that live here to be able to short-term rent out their house after they've been here and proven what kind of neighbors they are. They help create that neighborhood. But I appreciate your attention, and I hope you'll consider protecting the riparian district from businesses that would permanently affect a special area of the village. And I just, that's my Brooklynese in there. Thank you, guys. Sure.
Because there are other existing short-term rentals that are fully or partially within this district. Would your intention be that they should not be there?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's a very short consideration. There are two that I can think of right away. One's called the Oka something, and the other one's called the Lakefront Mode something.
I'm talking about short-term.
And there are short-term rentals in that district.
I mean,
No,
they're-
I think they're there now, but I think as all laws are, I would never want to be retroactive. I think there's a phrase in the Constitution about that. But I think
The problem is that this is renewed annually.
I know.
So if these changes were made, I think it would affect.
I think this is an area of dialogue. And I think that in order to protect, I really feel this is a special area.
I agree.
And I think this is not something that we can simply get up and say, put this in, do this, do that. I think we've got to be very careful when we do it. And I think it takes some consideration. And we have a group of almost 50 people that are discussing this. If you'd like input from that, we'd be more than happy to participate in any way we can. But maybe we just go to ban people running off anything into the lake. Okay, fair. Thank you. Any other questions that I can answer for anyone? No, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Anyone else wanting to speak? This is public comment, again, not relative to the camera policy public hearing, which will open at 7. No one else? All right. Celia and Bill, I should let you know that we have had a sort of zoning update committee active for about 2 years now, and fine tuning various aspects of our zoning code. In fact, you keep mentioning 2018. We actually tweaked it in 20 and in November 22. So those changes were also made for the short-term rental.
No, I
But-
understand that.
I'm sorry.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I know you've been, we had that conversation, yeah.
So, but we do appreciate it. We appreciate you leaving the comments. Because then we can refer back to them, and we're answering our questions here today. So we will be looking at that following up. Thank you. Thank you. Is my alarm still?
I'm wondering if I was just hearing that in my head. Oh, man.
Right. If there's no other public comment, we will move on. I'll handle the correspondence first, if that's all right, just go through that now. Just so everyone in our packet, we had a letter from the New York State Department of State congratulating the village on receiving our $4.5 million award from the New York Forward program. We had an email from Chip Northrop relative to 40 Lake Street regarding proposed changes short-term rental permit ordinance 30. So we also have that. We have a letter from 40 pertaining to 40 Lake Street from Roger McMillan commending the ZBA. We have an email from Beth Lynn again regarding 40 Lake Street. And so those letters will also be considered by the zoning review. Our fifth letter correspondence was from Eugene Mara concerning Cooperstown Distillery regarding parking concerns on Railroad Ave. That's currently 2-hour parking, but it really hadn't been hardly enforced. And when it became a moment that the street was blocked, the subject came up. So I'm going to refer that to Streets Committee for consideration of Railroad Ave. And we have a letter from Sam and Hilda Wilcox regarding concerns with the camera policy. And again, that was in your packet, and you can reserve that and refer to it when we open the public hearing in second. Now, as I start to close that public comment time, I do want to give one of our board members an opportunity. He wanted to say a few words. Our trustee who is going to be leading the board, the choir.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that there are folks here. That's incredible. I'm so glad you're all here. I just wanted to say a few words for the record. It is a bittersweet moment to here tonight because I didn't run for re-election and am serving my last monthly board meeting tonight. So I just wanted to say what a privilege and an honor it's been to sit on this board and to work with all of you and to be able to give back to a community that has raised me well and done a lot for me. And there are many ways to give back, and I find this has been, and I hope will continue to be in other aspects, the most effective way for me to positively contribute. From the efforts on Main Street to historic preservation to a variety of different things, from infrastructure to this great boardroom, just to a lot of work and an opportunity to work with Cindy Falk, who I think is really extraordinary. Ellen, Cindy, it's been great to have some other young people on the board with me. No offense, it's none taken. It's just really. It's just it's great to have been able to participate in a new generation of leadership, and to be able to work together with everybody to lead the community forward through what most of the time on my board were tough times. Lots of budget cutting and dealing with a once in a multiple lifetimes pandemic, and to a couple of board members who have since left, Jim Dean and Gene Dewey. It was a great pleasure working with them too. And I'm going to take all the skills and the positives and the criticisms and the feedback and take that all with me into the future. And I hope to continue serving Cooperstown in other ways. So thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Moving on, we have the review of minutes from our February 27th, March 1st, and March 9th meetings. I know Cindy and I submitted some corrections. I don't know if anyone else brought up anything. If not, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections submitted.
So moved.
By Nat, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, we already had our permits, yes. We are at our permits from the Hall of Fame for 2023 Classic Weekend, which is Memorial Weekend, and the induction, and also the special event this year, the Savannah Bananas. We have had a clarification. There were a couple of us who were wondering about the induction on that particular letter for the Baseball Hall of Fame induction, July 23rd. They had requested the field and parking lots beginning Friday, July 21st at 8 a.m. to Monday. But everyone who sat here last year knows that we reopened our parking lots on Sunday of induction weekend. So that is the one change on that. So let's begin with the classic, which is Memorial.
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
A special event weekend.
As a special event.
All right,
Well,
motion,
so I guess do I need to say that I'm approving Friday to Monday?
as long as it's what's in the letter, Jenna will take it from the request letter.
Well, but they're not asking for Monday, and I wonder if our merchants would be, like, for the special event, I wonder if our merchants.
If they want to come out and vend on our main street, or is that what you mean, or what?
Well, by declaring a special event, we're allowing vending outside of businesses.
Right,
They might want to do that on actual Memorial Day, even though that the hall isn't asking for anything on Sunday or Monday.
are we going to be doing something with our vending later?
Yes.
Setting-
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah,
Vending applications.
so why don't we relegate this just for the holiday?
just to the permit, I'll make a motion to approve the use of village property as submitted.
All right, by Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Ellen, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just because this looks a little different than our usual permits, are they gonna submit actual completed permits?
This is how they do it every year.
This is how they do, okay, then I guess my memory deceives me. Thank you.
Getting old, man.
So we'll move on to the induction, and as I clarified, Doubleday lot will be closed on Friday and Saturday, but will reopen Sunday. And then they have the use of Doubleday Field as well, from Friday, July 21 to July 24. So those, as long as we all understand that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve as submitted with the understanding that parking in the Doubleday lot will be available Sunday and Monday. Sunday, Monday.
All right, motion made, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And also relative to the induction is the closing of Main Street between Chestnut to Bear. Friday, July 21st, Saturday, July 22nd, and Sunday, July 23rd. So motion,
I think we could probably also note that that means portions of Pioneer Street at the intersection also of the being. No way out.
well, they can go. Nope, but that's always the way it is, they kind of just bring the traffic in for like that section of Pioneer from Lake.
Yep, and from church.
So motion, Sydney makes the motion, seconded by Joe, all in favor.
Aye.
And the last one is our new event, the Savannah Bananas, which will be in September. Let's see. They are requesting it for Friday, September 15th, at which point they'll be setting up the vending tents, etc., in the parking lot. The game would theoretically be Saturday, September 16th, with a rain date of Sunday, September 17th.
I have two questions related to the portion that says agenda.
Mhm.
One isn't really a question, but if there's a game at 11 o'clock on a Sunday with the PA system, there's a Catholic mass at 12 o'clock noon. At a minimum, the Catholic Church should be notified. That might,
The schedule for it is, at 11, there is no game on either day.
okay,
They're essentially, it's an event thing that if you have a ticket, you get in, and once you're in, you don't get out. That's how to the degree they're controlling the whole situation.
and that's fine, it just wasn't clear from this when they were gonna use the PA system. It
The
says
game
sort of-
starts at 1, so it'd be at 1 o'clock.
That would be great. And then my other question was about vending, because this is public property and this says the Hall of Fame is going to contract with the vendors. Does that have to be open to? Are we allowed to allow an outside entity to contract with the vendors, or do we have to use our vending?
That is to a degree, the hall has been the one kind of coordinating this with the Savannah Bananas, that I know they will have their merch truck.
And I don't know if there's anything illegal about you giving someone the right, but those vendors, I would think, would need to comply with our protocols that you've developed. And probably the hall should be aware of that. It's a board decision if you want to let them, you know, pick the vendors or not.
I'm looking at this application and vis-a-vis the question about the music and commentary and using the announcements speaker system. It clearly says PA system approval. Much of the show is music and commentary from the announcer. I think we have to tell them that they can't start until a certain period, because if that's the case, typically ballparks start playing the music as soon as people start coming in. That would be inappropriate on a Sunday morning. I can't believe I'm the one.
All right, so that's a good point. So is noon or not until
There's a massive thing,
there's a mass at noon?
at
So,
least currently, I don't know what their
Okay.
cover schedule is.
so the loudspeaker, if it does fall to the rain date, is there a concern with the mass on Saturday
At 4:30.
at 4:30? So that would not be a concern. All right, so if it's used on the rain date of Sunday, the use of the loudspeaker has to be limited pretty much to 1 to 3, which is the game time. Okay,
Make a inquiry or proposal, is there a way to modulate the noise level of the PA system? Going to be turned down as opposed to off? I mean, I'm not sure.
For it to be effective, it's going to be heard at the church.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, you can hear it all the way down the street.
I think they have to recognize this. It's a community built in this, surrounded by 3 or 4 churches. It is what it is. So if you still read it, okay. You have that, Jenna? Yeah. And was there another concern?
Those are my two about the vending at the PA system.
Okay,
Just for, as input, I think that. The hall coordinating is one thing, but making sure that the vendors are in compliance with everything we have on the books is probably. You know, so we're not picking and choosing.
Yeah.
You know.
in the villages.
Facilitating is one thing, but. Making sure that they understand.
All right, so with those 2 caveats, is there a motion to approve the use of the parking lot and double day?
I'll make that motion, including allowing the sale of alcohol on public property.
Motion made by Cindy, seconded by Sydney, all in favor? I think we can get through our, you have the zoning officials report. As you know, there was no HR or planning board meeting, this month. I would like to take this opportunity to appoint Jeff Reynolds as the second alternate position on CBA, and I see Jeff here tonight. So that's, I would like a motion to ratify.
So moved.
By Matt, seconded by Cindy, all in favor? Thank you, Jeff, very much for stepping forward and being willing to serve. I don't know if you've been in touch with Jenna, but she will get your information and see that you're sworn in before the next meeting. Thank you. You have the CEO's report in front of you. If there are no questions, he was here today. If not, I will accept this report. And I know it. I'm looking right at that on. All right. At this point, I'm not going to open the public hearing quite yet, simply because I'm going to read the statement about the public hearing. And then I've asked Cindy, who worked with two of our trustees, to kind of refine and work over this camera policy. It was first introduced in November, reviewed again kind of in December. We flew it up the flagpole again in like January, discussed it again, and in last month in February, set this public hearing. Not that we think we've got everything exactly right, but we also want to hear from the public. So there is a bit of a prelude on this. So if I will first read what the public hearing will be about, and then ask Cindy to recap the process that the board used. This is a public hearing on the use of cameras in public areas policy. The purpose of this policy is to enhance public safety, assist in the deterrence and investigation of crime, and protect critical infrastructure of the Cooperstown Police Department and the Village of Cooperstown through the use of cameras mounted in public areas. It further regulates how the camera system will be deployed, operated, maintained, and monitored at locations within the Village of Cooperstown, as well as how images captured by those cameras will be stored, accessed, disseminated, and retained. And our policy has been publicly available on our website. So hope you've all had a chance. So I will let Cindy at this point review the process.
So I'm excited to see so many people here. We had a public hearing on body worn cameras months ago, and no one showed up to say anything about them. So I'm happy that this has attracted more attention. And part of the reason is that you may know there is not consensus among our board members as to what this policy should say and how exactly it should work. So we really want to hear from you to get a sense of what the community is thinking. It's important to understand the type of cameras that this is about. So it's about fixed location cameras, permanently mounted cameras, not body worn cameras, not car cameras, and particularly not private cameras, because we know throughout our village, there are a good number of private cameras. We see one on Channel 2 with regularity. This is about publicly operated cameras. And if you're wondering why now, why are they talking about this now? This actually came out of a request from the village library. The library is also thinking about cameras. They're thinking about them for a different reason, and that is that their employees can't necessarily see everything that's going on in the library or people who are coming in the Fair Street entrance when they're upstairs at the desk. And that has caused concern. There have been a couple of times where there have been individuals here who were not necessarily here for good reasons. So they brought in a vendor, and we talked to that vendor at the same time to talk about whether there might be a way to use cameras within the village. The policy does address location, which as proposed include the main Chestnut intersection, Pioneer Park, here at 22 Main Street, and at Lakefront Park, with provisions that additional locations could be considered in the future. It addresses monitoring in that these are not cameras that are live streamed and routinely monitored. So if you've ever been to Bassett or some other security office where you're watching screens, this is not that. In most cases, they would be recording, and those recordings could be used later according to other provisions in the policy. In an extreme situation, a missing child, for instance, monitoring would be activated clearly for that type of use. The intent here is to find a way to walk the very fine line between public safety and personal privacy. And we may not all agree on where that line is. As this is written, these cameras would be largely investigative, right? They would be referred to after the fact to better understand what was happening. There is perhaps a level of deterrence in knowing that they're in use, but I hope that that's enough to get the discussion started.
Mayor, may I, as a member of the committee, make a statement to complement what Cindy said, just to help frame the
Totally.
audience. So, thank you. I served on a committee with trustee Richard Sternberg and Deputy Mayor Falk to review and revise an initial draft camera policy. I took on the assignment to assist in producing a draft for public review that will provide a complete and clear description of the policy, the reasons for having it, and how it would be implemented. I think our committee succeeded in that task. Members of the community have a chance to examine it closely and provide views on whether you recommend that the Board of Trustees adopt it or set it aside. Now that the policy is clear to me, I intend to vote against it. But that vote may change based on what members of the public hear tonight or in subsequent correspondence with the board and further review. I oppose adoption of the policy at this point because to me, it is a solution in search of a problem. The policy is also internally inconsistent.
Madam Mayor.
And you may ask how
I have allowed one trustee to introduce it. I am going to allow him to finish his statement.
you may ask how I can say we succeeded in providing a complete and clear draft for public review if it is internally inconsistent. The answer, as Mayor Falk pointed out, is that we did not reach a consensus in our committee. But we have a document and it is there available for its post scrutiny as you care to make of it. I approached my work on the policy with the belief that decisions to use policing cameras on the village should be based on data of crime and public safety. To that end, I propose that camera placement be subject to the criteria in what is section 5A5 of the draft policy. The criteria there are exacting and are meant to be. However, those criteria will not apply to 4 cameras that Deputy Mayor Falk described that will be installed simply upon the adoption of this policy. 3 of the cameras will be placed on Main Street and 1 somewhere near the shore and Lincoln. It is my view that any camera placement in the village should be subject to the camera placement criteria in section 5 of the policy, if there is to be a policy. Section 5B through E and section 6 regarding training suggests that access to and use of camera recording will be sharply restricted. In fact, that intent is limited by New York's open records regulations, the Freedom of Information Law with FOIA. In other words, the public has broad access to those limits. To check myself on that, I looked into New York City's policy on police cameras and found that FOIL does accommodate exceptions to disclosure. That is, permits refusal to disclose.
So I'm more than willing to have you make comments, but I'm going to limit them to 5 minutes. So
Okay,
Brian,
I've
yeah,
got-
you have a couple more minutes. I'm just
Yeah.
giving you a half point warning.
Thank you, appreciate it. So here are New York City's exceptions to disclosure of camera images to public requested. If it will result in unwarranted invasion of privacy, if it hampers an ongoing investigation, concerns an arrest that was later dismissed and sealed, this person's right to a fair trial, violates any other state or federal statutes. The vast majority of the recorded images will fall outside those exceptions because police activity on Main Street, while it occurs, is relatively rare. Thus, 24/7 recorded images likely will be subject to FOIL. We know that there is ever increasing use of manipulated images to defame or ridicule others on social media. Software for that purpose is becoming increasingly available. So FOIL camera images can then become the fodder for that kind of activity. The policy refers to people not having an expectation of privacy when they are in public places. We can debate the expectation of privacy and the desire to be left alone, But I would like to know if village residents and visitors want to have the price of their visit to Main Street be the surveillance recording of every step of the way. Most important to me is how to strike the balance between public surveillance and having no expectation of privacy. In my view, installation of cameras should be subject to strict scrutiny. Components of the policy need to demonstrate that there is a problem that needs surveillance cameras as a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And the only reason with Richard.
I was not aware that we would be making statements of members of the committee regarding this, therefore I don't have any prepared remarks. So I'm going to be speaking ad lib on this issue. And
Please remember too, that we all, once public, we're here really to hear what the public
I
says,
know,
and
but
when
you-
that's done, I will, all right, I've sort of let two people from the, I will let you begin, but you also will have an opportunity that they will not have yet shortly, but go ahead.
just as Joe had.
Yeah.
I've looked at some of these issues. And to me, sometimes these policies are like locking the barn door after the horses have escaped. I look at these policies and I look at places around the country. Things don't happen in many places. Many places say they never happen here until they happen here. I don't find that this is violating anybody's right to privacy. Specifically, there's no right to privacy outdoors. Two, I find that there's some conflict between people who say, on the one hand, we shouldn't have cameras, but if we need cameras, we can rely on private businesses. That's how we solve a hit and run accident on Main Street. I also find a comment that has been made previously about the right to petition their government without being identified. I don't understand that concept. If you're going to petition your government, don't you want to let them know who you are? I mean, I granted, people are concerned, people are afraid, but that's the basic concept in a free society. You have to stand up and be counted. You can't just hide under a rock if you want to protest. I've been caught in protests. I've been mocked, especially way back in the 60s. I understand the concept. It's scary, but if you're going to protest, you should put your name out there and say, I am protesting this issue. Overall, I don't see a reason why the village should not have a clear-cut policy for dealing with images on Main Street and not have to rely on the merchants on Main Street when we have a crime. I also think this is going to be important during Hall of Fame weekend when we have lost children, when there are other opportunities for minor crimes. And I think the village should be in charge of this information and not be relying on private citizens. Thank you.
All right. So at this point, I will open the public comment time period. And I am going to just read some of the comments. I know some of you have spoken before, so you know, please state your name, address, and if you're representing a particular organization, let our village clerk know what that is. Please raise your hand or stand and I will recognize you. You will be limited to 5 minutes. You get 1 more minute this time. And if you only use 3 minutes, you can't delegate those remaining 2 to anyone else. Everybody gets their 5. Board members, this is really our opportunity to listen to the public. So we are now done chatting. If there is something that one of you says and a board member says, I'd like a point of clarification, will ask me and we will then ask that question. But otherwise, you totally have the floor. Please address all remarks to the board as a body and not any member kind of thereof. And please recognize the commonly accepted rules, courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. With that said, who would like to speak first?
Thank you, Your Honor. Bob Olenek, LENEK 7 Westbridge Road. Thank you for the comments, all of you, but it seems to me this is a public safety issue. We don't get to choose the world we live in anymore. And to go to the Deputy Mayor's comment about for investigative purposes, I absolutely agree with that. Surveillance might be a different issue. I don't hear anybody talking about targeting anyone in particular, or any group in particular. Furthermore, yeah, well, I'm looking at our village attorney. If there are any Fourth Amendment issues, I'm sure that you've gone through these
We have.
before we even got to this point. And I'll keep it within my 2 minutes, maybe if I can. I've got many friends for years right on Main Street who do have businesses, who do have cameras, security cameras. And I'm not gonna represent that I polled everybody that I know in town, but I never heard a negative comment in the last week or so. It's always not surprising. I go back to what I said earlier, we do live in a world that we didn't choose. There are many things that have happened in the last 30 years. I believe really that it behooves us as a community, as a village, to, and we can work out whatever the record keeping might be, but there's no indication that it's going to be monitored 24/7 or anything like that. It's reactive rather than proactive, it would seem to me. That said, I offer my support and urge board to vote in the affirmative manner.
Thank you very much. Next. Yes.
Let's see, I am Sam Wilcox, and I have a new address that I can't remember right now. We lived on Pine Boulevard for many years, and I wrote some ideas down, and I got Hilda to listen to it this afternoon. She's a long-term English teacher. And she gave me an F on this. Nevertheless, I'm going to read it to you. There is disconcerting news that the Board of Trustees is considering to approve or disapprove of the installation of surveillance cameras along Main Street, parts of streets that cross Main Street and town parks. This is disconcerting news since most of us assume that surveillance cameras are used in large cities with high crime rates, not in small towns like Cooperstown. A plan to install cameras here means that we approve of the invasion of privacy of both tourists and local residents. It also implies that we assume that some tourists will engage in behavior that is illegal. I think that the psychological damage it may do could outweigh its potential value, since such an installation relays disrespect of its subjects. These cameras will not be a welcoming presence in our village. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Can I ask, what is the cost for all of this?
I'm sorry.
What's the cost of the ability to camera and all that stuff?
This is your opportunity to really ask questions. We've had that information up for a while. There have been some incidents. And I know there was some data provided. Oh, the cost, I thought the pause, I apologize. The cost. It really hasn't been priced at this point, I don't believe, has it?
If all the cameras without the pole, poles about it, roughly $10,000 to $12,000, one-time fee. And then obviously, if anything goes wrong, the repairs, then that's, an additional fee.
10 to 12,000, and what it's not including is a pole. There is a, for like Lakefront Park, there might have to be a pole put up in order to get a good view of the two village boat docks.
And it's reviewed every night by the police department?
No. No, this is really, there have been incidents with things stolen from boats and damage to boats that we were speaking about that one, and so it's, if something has occurred and someone, a boat owner says my boat was damaged, then the tape would be reviewed, but there is no active monitoring of this.
A question. Will the village own the cameras and equipment or are they leased?
That is correct, that's the $10,000 to $12,000 cost. Anyone else who would like to make a public statement?
Robert D. Lorenzo. I echo this gentleman's address, please.
Where do you live, Robert?
Hartwood, New York.
Harto, okay, thank you.
We do live in a society and a world that has changed, and it's not by our choice. I've been in that line of work, public safety. If given the choice of being safe or having privacy, I'm buying safety. This allows the officer at the site additional information to investigate the incident. It protects those who are on Main Street, protect those who go in and out of the store. I work in the Hall of Fame as a security safety officer. We have cameras. I can see where everybody goes. It allows us, if there is an incident, to go back to the camera, to get that information to the law enforcement agency if necessary. There are things that happen. We do have law enforcement agencies from local police, state police, FBI, Secret Service come into the hall during Classic Weekend, during induction weekend. They're there for the purpose not only protecting the players that come, but protecting the people. We even shut down and lock the garbage disposals in the event that a bomb is put in there. So we're protecting the people. So again, I'm buying safety opposed to privacy. We're not looking into somebody's bedroom window. We're looking at the people. And we had an incident today that 3 children were murdered in a school with 3 adults. And we say, well, you know, it doesn't happen here. We don't need a book of matches to start a forest fire. All we need is 1 match. And all that has to happen is 1 time. Not in my neighborhood. Well, you know what? It can't happen in our neighborhood. So I'm in favor of having cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, anyone else? Yes.
Richard Blamey, 90 Grove Street. Already it's been mentioned a couple of times that to say that we don't need it, that nothing happens around here is naive and putting your head in the sand. Something will happen and then, oh my goodness, you know, and it happens all the time in places where people said it couldn't happen here. So it will happen. The one thing we do know is that when something happens, everybody gets their phone. If they're not running away, they get their phone out and start taking pictures of it. So you say, why, or taking film or videos of it. So why have cameras? The issue is you want to know what took place before the activity, the event happened, when nobody was taking a picture of it. It's, if I use a sports analogy and a football player gets tackled and his base guard gets pulled on and he gets up and he punches the tackler and the ref throws a flag on the guy throwing the punch because he didn't see the prior event of infraction, you see. So the police want to know what led up to whatever incident, and that is you need cameras running before it happens. So, and people aren't going to have their phones out anticipating something bad happening. They're going to be taking their kids, getting pictures of their kids or something. Second point why you need an extra camera is how many times have we seen a picture of somebody, let's say, use a football analogy again, did he cross the goal line with the ball? And they will go on the NFL on the TV and they'll show 4 or 5 different, you know, views of it. And oh, in that one view, he did cross the goal line. Sometimes a picture doesn't tell the story. So somebody getting out their phone to take a picture, they might not see everything, or it may, what they're looking at, it'll look like something, but you don't see what was behind the person or what was over in the shadows or whatever, you know. So The more cameras you have, the closer you'll get to truth. And really what you want to have is truth, knowing what really happened and not have something that's distorted. So I think this is a great idea to have these cameras on Main Street.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Richard, Lorenzo, town of Otsego, actually. And I'm just kind of reiterating what I heard here tonight, the importance of safety. We moved here because this is a very safe area. And, you know, and I want it to continue to be a very safe area. And I don't feel that my privacy is being invaded by having these cameras. I just really agree with, you know, that the more information we have to not only help the police officers, but to keep us safe. You know, I mean, I just was listening to the news, I don't know, a couple of nights ago, and something that was happening in Utica. And if the camera tells it, you know, they were able to catch the person because of the camera. And so that's it for me, thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes.
George Passanelli, 105 Lake Street. If something serious were to happen on Main Street, we're probably gonna have our police department, maybe other agency, scrambling for video evidence. And the reality is sometimes the technology that's used in stores isn't very high quality. A lot of times the system loops, so things get erased. So if we need to go back several days, that information may not be available. Also, when these types of incidents go to court cases, the issue of the chain of custody comes up and say, okay, fine. There was a camera outside the tin bin, for example. Was the camera secured after the incident occurred? And like, so there are a lot of challenges, you know, that occur. It's not simple. Having a sophisticated system will greatly enhance public safety and perhaps really aid in either preventing or solving something, you know, serious that might happen here in the village. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Yes.
Hi, Tony Gentile, 5 left. More cameras myself. My question is, please, I'm hoping you're going to debate, and I think Joe started a little bit of that. The question of foiling these images. That's as a village resident and as other people coming and going. My biggest question is, how much can be foiled? Can any image be foiled? Can any 30-day period be foiled? Thank you.
Maybe do you mind if I address that, just or you want to wait for the
He's got the answer.
You know what, the question has been asked and I've already answered a question during this public hearing. So if you have information on that, please answer the question.
But a simple answer is to that, if you've ever seen our FOIA request, there's a spot where it says chief of police can deny. I can deny it, I'm going to deny any FOIA request for that video if there's not a reason for it. You're gonna have to give me a legitimate reason for why you need this film. Just for my own time period to do this, it's not easy to collect that information. Certain images are gonna have to be blocked out. I'm not gonna be able to just give you a plain video of everything that's gonna go on. And usually I just found out they'll tell you, they're saying it's 1 hour of video is 10-hour man hours to get that thing prepped. So unless you come up with a legitimate reason, I'm gonna deny it. Just to say, I want a copy of this day to this day to this day, what's the reason? Was there a crime? Was there a violation that a police officer did? You feel, if you can't give me that, I'm not just arbitrarily giving out video.
And I can deny that as the chief of police.
And I just,
If you'd like to ask a follow-up.
yes, just a follow-up is simply, I spent the day trying to find New York State law that actually wrote what is accepted, what rights you have to deny or not, and I couldn't find it. I'm sure it's there. But again, I'm hoping you guys debate and show exactly what New York State law is, so that the chief does have that right.
If, you know, you hear it sometimes on, when they're talking about fishing expeditions. When somebody that is called what we call a fishing expedition, you're trying to find something and you're putting in such a broad request, courts usually never approve that. I mean, I don't know of any that have. So.
Any other questions from the public or comments from the public? If not, I'll be closing the public hearing. At that point, there is no discussion from the public. The board will have the opportunity to discuss the camera policy that is before us. So, last opportunity, no? I'm closing the public hearing.
But you're all welcome to stay.
You're all welcome to stay, yeah. Or you can depart. It's not like we demand your attendance at school.
It's my theater.
And if you are gonna depart, I'm gonna give just a couple of minutes because it's disruptive. So, okay, just go ahead and exit. All right, so we are going to resume the meeting at this point. So the one speaking now will be at this table. And usually the process we do is we go around the table to just kind of poll our board members and give them each an opportunity to speak. So I'm going to begin that with Cindy Smency.
Yes, so I should probably start by saying that I am generally opposed to surveillance. When it has come up previously, I have voted against it, and when it did come up previously, it was for a camera mounted near the traffic light that would have, in addition to other uses, potentially stoplight runner uses. I think this policy as drafted has tried to walk that fine line that I mentioned previously, providing for public safety while at the same time protecting privacy.
Just a moment, could you please ask them to keep it quiet in the hallway?
To get to Tony's points, you know, we have addressed FOIL. It's on page 3, letter E, number 5. The Freedom of Information Law it's federal. We follow it, and I don't believe that we can do anything other than follow the federal law and the case law that has been developed around it. And you know, it was very helpful to hear various people's comments on this. When we did have a public hearing previously, there were many more concerns expressed, and I think we have tried to incorporate those concerns into what we presented this time, and it sounds like we've been fairly effective in doing that.
I want to thank you, Cindy. You chaired the sort of policy rewrite review committee, and I know that was not always an easy task, and it's very appreciated.
Well, and I do have to say, Joe went through this with a fine tooth comb and made numerous.
No, he chaired it, and I want to thank Richard and Joe for both serving. You've done.
I'm done.
Richard.
I will give Cindy credit for herding a couple of lions going at it. As I stated before, I do not find this damaging to civil rights and privacy. We all know there is no right of privacy out in the public area. We've been very careful about the discussion about using imaging or attempting to image, or even ultimately using imaging that goes into private homes, facilities, businesses. I think this is important. I've always looked at the issue, and as I said before, it can't happen here until it happens here. Uvalde would have said the same thing. The Tops Market in Buffalo would have said the same thing. The Tree of Life Church in Pittsburgh would have said the same thing. At a time when police powers have been advising us, have been advising our houses of religion to protect themselves and discuss safety policies, what to do when attacked, not if attacked, when attacked. I think this is very reasonable. It does not impose on anybody's civil rights. And I think the policy, as led by the committee, as chaired by Cindy, is fair, is equal, is safe, and as much as possible prevents any risk to the individuals in this community. I will be voting for it.
Thank you, Richard. McGuire.
I want to speak frankly about this. Jen, I have real issues with surveillance in an era of endless invasions of privacy. And I don't want to accept that this is our society. It's painful to have to do that. And I understand, that we are, we have tough times upon us. We've been through a lot, as somebody mentioned, the last 30 years. It seems to have gotten worse and worse. I view Cooperstown really as a kind of a haven away from a lot of the violence and crime that we see. The chief probably sees a little bit more than I out there on the streets, and it's an inner moral struggle for me. Whether or not I support this, to be totally honest, I still don't know. And if there's a phone call tonight, I really don't know how I'll vote on it. I am really struggling, which is why I'm grateful for everybody who came. And I appreciate the robust opinions of my colleagues. It's sad that that something like this is necessary. But I believe in that we need to do everything we can to protect public property and be able to solve crime in our community when it comes around. I have yet to be given a bold reason why we need to do something like this. I understand, every single community, whether they're surveilling or not, sees a variety of different crimes, small, petite issues and some larger ones, which we've had too. Obviously, I'm sure as you can tell, as I ramble on here, I'm really struggling with this one. I tend to side with public safety. I think but it's a hard choice. If we vote this evening, I will probably vote in the affirmative. But I think I just go back to that it is really sad times upon us that this here in Cooperstown is necessary. But I heard a lot of support in the room tonight, and that's convincing. But I think we all should reflect on why it's necessary in the first place. So, thank you.
Thank you, McGuire. Joe?
Just a couple of follow-up points. Again, I had said that I thought there was a solution in search of a problem. The horror of school shootings was raised tonight. Well, we can raise it every night because there's always the horror of a school shooting. And cameras have nothing to do with preventing a school shooting. And tonight, the television was full of praise for the police officer who responded within a minute or 2 minutes. Only 6 people. Only 6 people. So please, I urge all of us not to talk about school shootings as a reason to have a camera. What we need to prevent school shootings and violence in our communities is to change our gun laws. A very tough topic, but that's where reality lies, not in camera policies. In terms of the internal contradiction, we have a statement in D1, viewing of archived images. The data shall be kept strictly confidential. And 6 sentences down, we're talking about FOIL to lab. I don't believe that we can arbitrarily deny a FOIL request.
You have to have a reason.
You have to have a reason. The
You have to have a reason
requester,
for the request.
You have to have a reason for the request. Yeah.
you can have a reason for the request. For example, I had a great vacation. The images of the village are indelible in my mind. I'd like a recording of the street the day I was there. I mean, we are not all talking about investigations. We're not talking about criminal activity. We're talking about the freedom of information law. And it is, we cannot say that you don't have a right to privacy. Have it being recorded in a public space and then say, I'm going to keep those images and no one else can have them. So I'm not trying to debate this. I'm trying to say how complicated and challenging this is. And purchasing safety as the over privacy is, to me, a false choice. And if we're going to be deliberating about what we really need to do to protect ourselves from violence in our society, cameras is at the end of the list. I'll make one more remark, and that is tonight, just before the meeting. Thank you, Frank. Our police chief submitted some data to us, which I have not been able to analyze. It was statistics from the county about what priority 1 and priority 2 calls were over the last 5-year period. I have no idea how to categorize that information, what to make of it, how it can inform a decision that we have to make on this policy. So for my part, I would prefer that we get a chance to analyze that before we make a decision on this policy. And finally, my last point, because I'm just taking my time to make this point. We have criteria for how we're going to deploy cameras, and we're not using those criteria to deploy 4 cameras at the outset. That, to me, undermines the integrity of the policy.
May I ask you to define one of your statements? May I?
Yes.
You said we have no proof that cameras have prevented events, you have no proof. We have no proof that cameras don't prevent incidents. We have no way of knowing what might have happened, what happened, as science fiction people say, on a different timeline. You can't make that statement anymore, as you say, that I can make the statement that they do prevent events.
I respect that remark. What I think what I was trying to say, to clarify, is that when the events do happen, the issue of whether the camera would have prevented it or not is off the table. The events have happened. Is a horrible record of the horrible event. So, but it hasn't done. That event was not stopped by.
That was
because
others made it.
But that's my point.
Yeah, okay.
my point.
I think right now
Don't make
there's a-
false-
we recognize the difference of opinions on the board.
And I just would like, and I just would like, to make sure that this FOIL question is looked at more closely, because I do not think we have the ability to do,
Cases I looked at, Joe, just so you know, the judges look at these and they look at whether or not the request is reasonable, almost employing an arbitrary and capricious test. I think the police officers are probably gonna have a pretty good idea unless there's some pretty ascertainable rationale that makes sense for disclosing. I have almost no question the court would decide with a decision not to divulge.
I want to distinguish between law enforcement intrusion activities and people who just want images. And I don't know that our village government should or can arbitrarily preclude the access to those images. I don't. Maybe it's out there, but it's a question, right? Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Sid,
Thank you for everyone's voice, and everyone who's spoken today. I think it was really informative. I wanted to echo McGuire and Cindy's sort of initial hesitation with surveillance. When I hear the word surveillance, my initial sort of response to it is negative. That being said, I did not grow up in Cooperstown. I lived in the city for a very long time. I've seen things that can happen, not, things that I assume are going to happen, but things that can happen. And I'm very lucky to be able to move to a place where I feel super safe walking down the street at night, which I don't think I can actually say that about any place that I've ever lived before. And it would be really, it would be an awful day for something to happen where we need to use those cameras to solve something like a missing child or a horrible event. But I do think that they would be really useful for something like that. And I also think that we should take into account the fact that Cooperstown, it's not just a small quaint village where we all get the privilege of calling home. It's also a tourist town. We see tens of thousands of people come in every summer, every year. We can't control who comes in, what they do, how they do it. And I, like Max said, err on the side of public safety over privacy. I also firmly believe in Joe and Rich and Cindy's sort of efforts to create a draft of a policy that is tight, that tells us how the cameras are going to be used, that ensures our sort of peace of mind. And so for that, I would say that I'm going to vote in the affirmative.
I, as mayor, unlike Oniana, I actually can vote. So I will be voting on this. I will say that I am obviously a village native. And would I have ever thought about this at a prior point, having become mayor and conversing with other colleagues? We're like one of the last ones to end up with a cameras policy and public cameras. And I will say some of my colleagues actually put up the cameras and thought about a policy afterwards. I want to really commend this board and all the trustees on it. We're doing a lot of due diligence and work on this policy. I think it really shows that effort. It's more than half a year in the making. We ran it up the flagpole several times and have really benefited from our village community providing their insights on that. But I do think we are at a point, as Sydney mentioned, we welcome hundreds of thousands of tourists every year. And it's critical that we provide safety, not just for our residents, but for all the visitors to our community and also to village property. We've had incidents when our solar powered compacting trash receptacles were hit buy a vehicle. These are $10,000 units. Units, by the way, that when we were planning our Main Street renovation, we had to ensure we also spent additional funds on that weren't covered by a grant to be able to put plates on them, to lock them during induction and all our public events. That's the time period we live in now. We have to think on so many levels of public safety. And I do think this is a well-crafted policy. As we've seen on many of ours, whether it's short-term rentals or whatever, we're always there to tweak and make better and improve. And this could possibly happen with this policy as well. But I do feel strongly that we are at the point where we need to adopt this and move forward with these camera installations. All right.
May I have the privilege to move that this board pass policy for installation, operation, and maintenance of fixed location cameras by the Cooperstown Fire Police Department, draft February 2023, as we have before us.
Motion made by Richard, seconded by Cindy. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Thank you all for your consideration and work on this. It's very important and it's appreciated. All right, we are going to be moving on. We have, police committee and fire committee did not meet in March, so we'll be moving on to, I know, Hannah isn't here for Doubleday, but there were several requests relative to our events. One, the CCS baseball uses Doubleday as a game field, and we've been asked by parents to offer concessions. This is from the CCS Sports Booster Club. Is that possible for the varsity games at Cooperstown's Doubleday field?
It is under our vending law, so they could submit a vending permit application, and I it seems to follow all the provisions.
And we would sort of stipulate where it would be in Doubleday, sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. So they,
An opening day is of the season, but we meet again next week.
yes, we do. So Jenna, you would have the contact information for Elisa Chase and notify her that, yes, that's within purview of our vending law, but they would need to submit a permit. And just let her know when the board would meet to sort of be able to approve that, so that could move forward. And then, and this is sort of apropos of the Savannah's discussion, which is Milford Central School request to vend a Savannah Bananas event. I know that the high school will be vending there as they normally do.
Cooperstown.
With Cooperstown High School, that's CCS.
And what that application said is that the Hall of Fame was making arrangements for the vendors, so if they're interested,
Yeah,
they should contact the Hall.
yeah,
So let them know to contact the Hall.
Hall of Fame. Thank you. And the last one relative to Doubleday is the live broadcasting at Doubleday Field. I think this was alluded to at our last meeting. It appears we have now a little more information. It's been provided.
Do we know if this broadcasting company is doing this as a for-profit arrangement, or if they are simply being kind to people in their community and doing it? Because if it's for profit, I feel like it needs to follow the same provisions as our photography fee, where a portion of that profit gets returned to the village.
I don't think the person that was just to live stream it, what could make it, but I don't know.
Well, if it's not for profit.
It's hard to believe there's much process.
I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I can't believe it's not a profit notice.
I mean, if they're not doing it for profit, then with the permission of the teams, I have no issue with it. If they are doing it for profit, I actually don't have an issue with it, but I feel like there should be a profit sharing agreement.
Yeah. This is April 19th, so we are just a few weeks away from that.
This sounds like a fantastic setup, right? Like 7 to 8 cameras around. the
I know,
world.
I can't believe that there is some, what shall I say, remuneration somewhere along the line. They have remote activated and 78 cameras, 2 are with, and 2 broadcast announcers. I don't get the sense this is a small town production, shall I say. We do meet, Jenna, you know, a week from today, so if we could get the answers to these questions. And
Do you
they
want to
could,
know if it's for profit and what else?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. And if it is for profit, we have an agreement that we've used in the past with a still
So
photographer.
like a contract agreement like we have with the photographer.
Yeah.
that's correct. That's correct. And they would have to pay that to be on Doubleday Field. So if they have that and put that in, we could approve it next week, you know, prior to April 1st. Well, no, April 3rd, so April 3rd, so they'd have a little bit of time. So thank you, Jenna. All right. This is the whole thing minutes.
There was no meetings.
There was no.
They did not meet.
Okay, all right, so there's nothing to accept. Moving on to Streets Committee.
All right, so lots of things for streets this month. I'm going to, while I'm speaking, pass around a picture of what a lantern fly trap looks like, so you can all, that's on the agenda a little bit. So first of all, I want to make clear with trolley that, in that first bullet point, it says removing safety measures. I feel like that's a little misleading. That's removing the text that describes our safety measures as opposed to like, we're gonna clean the trolleys. And that's that type of thing. The one action item related to the trolley has to do with boat trailer parking. Which we talked about, I don't know whether it was last month or the month previous, about offering a free, you know, basically pass if you park your boat trailer at a remote lot. So the way the trolley works is that the fare box gets split between government entity and the provider. The government entities could waive their portion of the pass, but the provider would still need to be paid for those riders. Now, what happened on, I think, Otsego Express, when it had free services during the pandemic, is that Tammy worked out a way with DOT to do this, so it didn't affect STOA funding, but it required basically payment to the provider for the number of lost passes. She's willing to work through that process again, but I wanted to make sure that's actually what we wanted to do before forcing her to work that out with DOT. So in essence, what that would mean is that some part of the village, whether that's our general fund or our trolley enterprise fund or out of our boat receipts, would need to pay the provider $1.25 for every freebie rider.
That doesn't seem like an insurmountable
I don't think
problem.
it is.
Benefit we get with a better organization with that. Everything, but
Yeah. She's more than willing to work with DOT on it for us, and we could certainly advertise it fully. I'm not sure that it's going to be, at least in the first year, a huge number of individuals who take advantage of that, but if we restrict the parking, you know, there will be less parking and therefore they have to put their trailers somewhere else they're getting parking.
So potentially, if there are, I don't know, really only one person would be going there, so it's not more than $1.25. We aren't surmising that 2 people will ride the trolley back and 2 will stay in the boat or something.
I would think that that's
It
the
would
way.
just be the $1.25.
Yeah.
Mhm. I think it certainly is a workable process. You know, we've long said that that's one thing we would like is for people with trailers to use our peripheral parking and, but we're really only looking at this kind of probably season because parking is not as much an issue post,
Yes, it would,
Labor Day.
it would really be Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then potentially, although I can't imagine, you know, anything, the Savannah Bananas Day. That a lot of people would want to park their boat somewhere else and take the trolley.
Yeah, 100%.
We would be paying 125, is that correct?
Some aspect of the village.
Which
would
would
have
be
to
paid.
do-
They would have to cover that
Okay.
for the provider. The other part goes to,
Us.
so normally, so on a 250 toll ride, we get 250. No,
We get 124.
we get 125.
And then if we're just waiving that, then we're just not receiving that income.
Right. I mean, we never actually see it anyway, because it always ends up paying her.
Yeah.
Would we lose it for our STOA accounting?
If Tammy works with DOT and sets up all of the appropriate paperwork, which she has done once before during the pandemic. No, it would not, it would still be counted in our STOA.
And we're still, did I notice that we're still using the 2019 figures?
We were able to use them again this year.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway, really, to a degree, we would
Well,
still get.
The issue is whether it would completely negate our STOA funding, because to receive STOA, you have to charge something. So if you're letting people ride for free, then you can't.
Sorry. Oh,
Can that,
so she's going to ascertain if a 50% payment would count still, yes.
If it's the consensus of the board that we want to try this summer, she will start the paperwork.
I just have a question, in terms of our boat fee, however that's calculated, can we add the transport costs into it? I mean, it's a cost to us.
Unfortunately, we've already asked people to pay for the vote. Are you talking about the daily pass?
Yeah, the launch.
The
fee.
$10 launch.
Yeah,
fee.
yeah,
So,
because those are the people, I mean, it's not our dock people, it's the
It's the
people who are
people
trained,
operating.
so.
So it essentially changed it from 10 to 11.5.
I assume people pay that with cash.
Yeah. Wait, yeah.
Or is it because it's a, well, it's just a thought, I don't know.
I think it would mean there'd be less usage of the trolley thing then, because if I see a spot over there, I'm gonna get my boat and no, and I'm gonna pay 10. Why do I now pay 11.25 and drive up the road, you know?
I thought we were gonna accompany this with some kind of limitation on trailer parking down there.
But even so, there is still, you know, what I'm saying, I think it's difficult to have a moving target for a launch fee. I think establish the launch fee and cover the $1.25 elsewhere. I think that's, I think the perception of that is.
Well, I think the best thing is to have the trailers offsite.
And honestly, if hundreds of people use this, it's a success.
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't want to do any impetus by charging a little more down there for the launch fee in any way.
So I'm like totally in favor of this. My one concern is just the traffic of actually physically, like the boat launching itself, right? So someone is getting their boat in the water. Someone else is waiting to get their boat in the water, then they're moving their truck up and then they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same process over again of having to go, leave their boat, go get the car, come back. And I'm just wondering if there's a way for us, like, I don't know, like I'm just worried about that sort of.
I think the inspection folks would have to encourage them to have the day slips at the end of the dock and not just leave
It's
it
4
like.
days left at the end, and there's actually, when you launch, there's actually a long section there that you can tie up temporarily.
Sort of messaging, we asked the day slip or the boat launch, those who are sort of doing the inspections and everything to be clear about the expectations, and hopefully that will work. But I think if there's more spots open for cars parking, that's just a win, right? Yeah. And my other thought question is, if after 2 years, it becomes very clear that this is not working.
I'd say after this.
After this, then we'll be, okay, fine. Okay, then I think I'm definitely.
I will touch base with Tammy and let you know how that all progresses. The other trolley related thing I think is relatively easy, and that's that we need to set the advertising rates for 2023. We're starting to get inquiries from people who had their signs up previously. I would suggest that we use the same rates that we did last year. And remember that there was a discount given for 2 or 3 signs as we developed rates last year. With a flat rate for 1 is like a discount for 2 and a little bit of a discount for 3.
I would agree with you. I would like to track when we get requests, because if we're getting requested early, there may be more demand for this for the future.
Interestingly, there's one engineering firm that seems to be.
They already dropped off their application and I'm running, so.
There.
We're already into, was it in 2021 when we were almost through the season? And so so then they got through 22, so now we have the new rates.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
All right, moving on. So I guess I'll make a motion to maintain our 2022 trolley advertising signage rates.
Second
by Richard, all in favor?
All right. Moving to streets and sidewalks, the one action item, now that Fenimore Lane is getting a little more traffic. We don't have in our local law provisions for a stop sign, where Fenimore Lane hits Chestnut Street. So I'd like to make a motion to set a public hearing for our April regular meeting to establish a stop sign at the east end of Fenimore Lane where it intersects with Chestnut.
I thought Fenimore Lane was only one way going west.
It is both directions.
Okay.
Motion made by Cindy, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
And know that the owner of the private drive that enters onto Pine Street is amenable to placing a stop sign at that end as well. And this discussion came out of a public complaint about people kind of sliding through the intersection sign.
The Pine Boulevard, Fenimore.
And the Chestnut.
Both
directions, yes. And then I don't know if my picture of the lantern fly trap.
I haven't seen it yet.
Made it around.
I've been questioned.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is it a lantern fly or is it a lantern fly trap?
We're talking
We're
about.
trapping lantern flies or we're using?
It is a lantern fly, is what the invasive insect.
Okay.
Yes, the invasive insect is called a spotted lantern fly.
Okay, thank you.
We, to the
That
best of our
clarifies.
knowledge, do not have any.
We would know.
Yeah.
They're horrible,
yeah.
they're disgusting and they land on everything and they get into everything, so.
So,
What the flowers love bugs?
but I almost printed out a picture of the bugs, but I decided you wouldn't see that. In any case, OCCA would like to raise public awareness about these lantern flies because we should be keeping our eyes out for them. And they would like on our property here at 22 Main Street to install one of these traps with a sign no bigger than 8.5 by 11 in one of our trees, probably the maple, to educate people who are coming to the library and the art association and the village offices about lantern flies and keeping an eye out for them and possibly putting up your own.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is unique about this trap that catches specifically lantern flies?
I wish I could explain that to you, but I do not have that level of knowledge.
Well, I'm just wondering, is it like a pheromone? Are we asking them to come all the way here to Cooperstown? And where are they being found? You know, Pennsylvania. Okay, so it's imminent.
Get into things, I don't just stay there, because I was visiting family in New Jersey this summer and they were flying into my car as I was driving down the road.
What?
And if they get here, they quickly.
Oh,
they get
We're
here.
gonna blame you, Sydney.
I will not go back to New Jersey if that's what's going on.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
as to what is,
In the draft.
what makes them want to be in that trap.
I don't know. I can find out more.
Other
for you.
land.
And how close do they have to be like, oh, I want to be in there?
Why don't you get a little more information?
So
I'm fine with it. I'm not.
I might,
Will it be on
I
a tree,
suppose.
on the tree line or on a village lawn tree?
On a tree that is within our 22 main property, he suggested the maple by the library.
If there were land required, this is how we would like to cap.
I'm, you know, passively, I'm gonna move that we allow this, if no other reason for scientific research. And also to give us advanced warning that these things are coming to town.
Let's hope that they, I don't really hope that. If they're.
Okay, second.
Yeah.
All right, so motion was made, seconded by Richard, all in favor?
Actually, the other way around. Oh, you made a motion?
No, you made the motion.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to answer any other questions about things that are on the streets committee, in the streets committee.
Under capital projects, Grove Street, there, what is the large change order for additions?
I think that we have seen that already, if I remember correctly. It's like, it's the accounting for the final project. I know that I've seen it. I think that it came to the board.
The Richardson Windows one?
No, the Grove Street culvert.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking.
I feel like I remember seeing that.
And so the issue is, and probably the reason that it hasn't been paid, is we're holding the retainage.
Well, because of the
curb-
damage.
curb
of the
and the
curb.
grass seed, because we
Yeah.
want the grass to
Yeah.
grow. So we can't go out for final payment until the retainage issue is resolved, but I'm fairly sure that we've seen that change
I
over.
don't think, I
It was a whole bunch of pluses and minuses.
But otherwise, it's not a large change cost to the village.
There was an overage, but we approved it already. I'm almost positive.
Okay. And now the only thing left on it then is the retainage for the
For the
damage.
curb and the grass.
Okay. And what about the rain gardens? It's, you stated that the next step is to make flyers to distribute to businesses, noting that they can plant whatever they would like in the rain gardens.
That might be a little bit of an overstatement.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's a bit of an overstatement.
I have not done this yet. I need to make a flyer to like hand deliver to businesses and to have the chamber, and I also need to put like a letter to the editor in the Freeman's Journal. I have not done any. of
This
those
is
yet.
the adopt
Adopt.
rain garden.
All right, but the brochure you're going to distribute won't say they can plant whatever they
No,
want.
it'll suggest like perennials.
Okay,
Not like
The-
tomatoes outside Toscana.
That they want came from we had a
Big water
discussion
cigarette
about
butts and dogs.
tomatoes.
excuse me,
So last summer,
there were tomatoes.
there were
growing.
tomatoes, and no one on the streets committee seemed especially to disapprove of the tomatoes, as long as people understood that they would be hit by cigarette butts and dogs use the rain gardens to relieve themselves and, you know. I never saw.
Makes
a
a
tomato.
great salad, you know.
I never saw a tomato on those plants.
Oh, you did.
Oh, did you?
probably, maybe not
Probably
many
producing
one would get it.
Tomatoes is too
There, but,
toxic.
Deer would get them, the deer are everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on streets committee? If not, then we will motion to accept the streets committee report.
So
Before we move on to buildings,
There was
I'm sorry.
That he just.
I still
told him that there was
wanted
no
to-
second.
Moved in,
I'll
is that 1 second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on too far, I noticed we have representatives from the Bank of Cooperstown, and I'm sorry, with the public hearing earlier, I didn't really notice you sitting there. And you've been very patiently waiting. I guess I thought you might speak during the initial public comment, but we do have your proposal and it's under finance. So I'd be more than glad to jump forward to that at this point. And if any board members have any questions, or if you want to speak to it all, we will do that now.
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to add us to the agenda. My name is Kyle Iron. I've been with the bank 5 years now. And this was,
I'm Nicole Southern. I've been with the bank for 11 years.
so this really came to our attention recently when the village took some night class money out of the account, for valid reasons. There was a big incentive and interest. We've realized that has been growing and we would like to match the rate. We would match the rate on the first of every month. And it gets reset then. And then we also, during that time, we did an account review with the whole relationship and realized that interest rates have been going through the roof crazy, like recently. And we're moving up the municipal account to 1.5 with balances over 50,000, as well as money markets at 1.5. We feel that it'll help the village out a lot. There's a lot of interest on the amount of money that you have in there. Definitely pay for at least one salary. And then if the night class money comes back, we think it'd be better served in this community than in the state fund. So if you have any questions on any of the accounts or anything like that, we'd be happy to answer.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, you were good. You, we obviously still have quite a list of accounts with the bank in Cooperstown, including much more money than we moved to night class. We tended to move reserve funds and accounts that we wouldn't be pulling from every day, you know, because we don't have checking privileges. It's just basically interest bearing. And when I had the treasurer's check, we were still getting 0.1% and 0.05%. So some of those accounts are going to be moving to 1.5 just automatically.
Correct. Yeah, so, the spreadsheet that I had sent to you that has the 0.05 and 0.1, those will get moved to 1% and 1.5% respectively. For checking in your money market. You only have regular checking and then money market products, so those would be, all the checking would move to 1 and all the money markets would move to 1.5. And then if you did with the night class funds, if you did want to house them back with us, we would match the rate that night class gives you now. So that would be higher than the 1.5.
And I did notice, you had a great ad in the paper. I was looking at it for me personally for the CD, but it's not new money only. So if would we be able to move any of our current funds at Bank of Cooperstown into one of these CDs, or no, because it's not new money?
So those CD specials we no longer have. Actually, the specials that we have are higher than that now. So we have a 10-month at 4.55 and a 24-month at, or 22-month at 4.35, I believe. Or to double check.
If the village has set CDs that they want to look at, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, we can get it out for a bid, whether it's CFO, and we can quote you a rate specifically for the village.
Yeah. What I'm asking is our money that is currently at perhaps Bank of Cooperstown. It puts some of that, it wouldn't be new money because it's in an account there. Would it qualify for any of these nice CD rates?
Yes.
It would, you would.
But also, I mean, with those rates and even the rates that we currently have, the night class rate is higher than any CD rate we have.
Yeah, it was 4.49 last I checked.
Yeah, this morning when I checked, which they go along hand in hand with NILAF, which is the New York Liquid Asset Fund, was 4.7.
Yeah. And as I say, the bulk of our funds are actually still with the Bank of Cooperstown.
Right.
Yeah, so we would be very interested in seeing what you could do to maximize our interest rates on those accounts. It would be great. And I'm sure Deb will be chatting with you about it.
Sounds good.
Does anyone, I have lots of questions here, Matt, I saw you first.
So did we make this change in the last meeting?
Yes.
When we were in the ballroom?
No, we approved it we approved the policy change in January.
Okay, forgive
The
me.
board
I missed
actually
it.
doesn't, just so you know, your fiduciary responsibility here, the board doesn't actually make any investment or banking decisions. That's vested in our treasurer. And she does all her work in compliance with the New York State Comptroller. So she is the one. We authorized NICLAS as another depository in addition to Bank of Cooperstown. And we did that at our January meeting, and we also updated our investment policy at the
Got it.
January meeting. So that cleared the floor.
Sure. Well, we sign off on those, and so just as I know I'm as lame of a lame duck as it gets, I'm on my way out here, but just as a general feeling, investing as much as we possibly absolutely can in every single way here in the village. I know Bank of Cooperstown makes a really extraordinary effort to keep as much money here in the community as possible. I think is within the realm of our fiscal responsibilities to the taxpayers.
As I say, they still have the bulk of our money, so we're very glad when they're going to pay us a little more than the 0.1% and the 0.05.
As a question to you, a statement to you and a question. As you must understand, the village government does have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of the village.
Yes.
Am I correct in stating that the bank does not specifically have a fiduciary responsibility to us and its customers? By that, I mean, you're being reactive here instead of being proactive in terms of, okay, we're going to match these people. Instead of coming and saying, well, maybe we can beat them. Maybe we'll be watching out for opportunities to increase what we pay you on a monthly basis. The NICLAS sort of does that, adjusts itself automatically. And I'd hate to think that our bankers can't be looking out better for our interests, our citizens' interests in that sense, instead of waiting for us to come to you to say, hey, what about this?
Yeah, so to answer to relay on that, we had been working with the county treasurer previously months ago. And it was going to be held in an account with the county through us. There was some, I guess, miscommunication between us and Alan. And some concerns that weren't properly relayed to us. That between the villages and Alan keeping track of the interest-bearing accounts. So we didn't go out to all the villages because he was gonna house it. And then since then that didn't happen, and then we realized at that time money wasn't coming in and it went out instead. So now instead of following it through the county, we're going to the villages in town and offering the product directly instead of through the county. So we were working on that product beforehand. And we're also being proactive with checking accounts. If you go ask anyone else, I don't think you will find a 1.5% on your checking accounts. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, any other questions for us?
No, that's it. But like I said previously, it would be beneficial to the bank and the community. I think if we could have the money from NICLAS with us, if we would be like this.
Yeah, you realize we have almost double at the Bank of Cooperstown what we moved to NICLAS. So we are being very generous to the local bank.
I understand that.
Yeah.
If I may just pick up on one point we made, Kyle. Hi, by the way. You said one of the features of the NICLAS account is that it's adjusted daily, it's available.
Yes,
You had mentioned monthly.
yes.
Rate.
So we adjusted the rate monthly. So just to keep track of it on our own, we do it on the first of every month. So on a raising rate environment, which is kind of where we are now, but meaning towards the end, people are saying at least, who knows? You might miss out on a small fraction. On a declining rate environment, you will benefit because we'll be holding the rate longer as it goes down.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I'm sorry, You should have raised your hand, so you didn't have to listen to the.
I think it was appropriate at that time.
All right, yeah, move you forward. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
So we improved streets, we're now on buildings.
My apologies. Buildings, so we have a couple of action items. Cindy, do you want to talk cleaning first, or do you want to go straight, do we want to do windows first? Take it away, let's get the windows out of the way.
So first, just the general update on the windows upstairs in the ballroom, the expectation, well, they thought there might be a significant delay due to COVID going through the shop. They do expect to have those windows done by the first week of April, so all of those events that are happening later in the month should be good to get, so that's exciting. A few months back, I think we reviewed a proposal for a change order to that would allow us to do the windows that are downstairs on this level. It's an excellent price, I believe, and the benefit to doing it as a change order as opposed to going out to bid is that we don't have to pay for the architectural services once again to prepare bid documents. When Richardson was the lowest bidder and is basically honoring the same price as last year moving forward. The reason to move forward on that now is that this business is so successful, they are already starting to bid into 2024 and build their schedule. So rather than wait till we approve our budget and then accept this change order, it makes sense to do it sooner rather than later so that we can get moving on this project. The other reason to do it now is that we've started to get reimbursements back from things like the skylights. So we know that we have money in our capital fund to take care of this expenditure. And I know it's in my packet somewhere, but I'm not seeing the particular sheet that has the exact dollar amount on it, which I think is 59,000 and change, but somebody has that.
It should be under the document if you don't want.
I thought it was right here, but
Wait, so we're talking about the interior storm window?
no, we're talking about the windows downstairs on this level.
This,
Yes,
we've moved them into the next fiscal year.
correct, but we now have the money in the capital account so that we can take them out of the next fiscal year budget and pay for them out of the capital account and allow them to schedule them sooner rather than.
I thought when that money came in, Mitch said it was, maybe he'll text us. I thought he was putting it in there with the idea that it would be in the next.
This work is not likely to happen this month, next month, June, July. I mean, he's already looking out until like January of 24. So if we want to get on his schedule, we need to.
Oh, okay, so you're not saying we're doing it right now. These interior storm windows.
No, these are
These windows.
not the interior storm.
Everyone should have it, it should be underneath the double day field one, it's 59,500, it breaks down all of the hardware. Everybody wants copies, I can make them, I thought they were gonna have it.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's further in our.
It's
financial
way
pack.
around.
Yeah, it is, it's under,
It's on the
so are we handling it then, or you want to handle it now?
It doesn't matter, it's on the agenda now.
Yeah, it was on it twice because it came in after, so then I put it on under the capital project.
Okay, well, let's pull it from our finance pocket, and we're all looking at it, it's the 59,500.
So this is for the basement windows, not storms, not screens.
Okay.
Different.
Can we call this the village offices and not our basement? It's bad enough that we pour millions into a building and we're relegated to the basement.
I usually call it the lower level.
Yeah, the lower level.
I think it was Village Hall.
Yeah.
I think it's Village Hall. Upstairs is something else.
Yeah, just a quick question. Clearly, we're gonna need storms for energy efficiency. Would they make part of it, or do we have to go and do something?
So that kind of relates to the next item that's on this about the storms upstairs. Some of our windows on this level have storms on them, some of them don't.
Some of them look like that.
Yeah, it's fairly complicated. This is just to restore the windows, which in and of itself will provide more energy efficiency, because if you look carefully, you can usually see the daylight between the two casements. So I'll make a motion to approve this change order for $59,500.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then the confusing part is that there is a proposal on here from the Art Association for screens for the upstairs windows. It looks like this, it's got like 8 splatters in the.
Oh, no, I just saying I had it in front of me now.
So the idea here is that the Art Association is willing to pay for, in exchange for a deduction from their rent, a wooden frame that gets installed to the exterior of those openings upstairs, and a screen insert that will fit into it. The village could choose to add to that at a later date, which we budgeted for in our next budget, a storm insert that would replace the screen. But what the Art Association is suggesting is that they are willing to pay for the frame and the screens, which will allow them to open the windows in the classroom and in the ballroom during the summer and not let in bugs, at a total cost of $11,200 that they would like to have us deduct from their rent.
And have we vetted the proposal with who's doing it?
The same company that's restoring the windows.
I think it's fine.
There have been discussions at various points about other ways to secure those windows and bars and grates, and it seems like we've gone through every permutation. I think this is a good solution. I do think I would like us to approve it, but I would like us to approve it contingent upon either SHPO approval or SHPO saying that they don't have to approve storms, which I think may be what they say. But
So it hasn't gone to them yet, SHPO?
No, because we wanted to see if the trustees were amenable to
the rent
exchange, yeah.
I'll second that if that's a motion. Is that a motion, Cindy?
I'll make a motion to approve this proposal from the Cooperstown Art Association in the amount of $11,200 in reduction in rent in exchange for screens for the upstairs windows, contingent upon approval by SHPO.
Or SHPO stating that they need to give it.
Motion made, seconded by Richard, all in favor?
Aye. Okay, my friends, we have one more item for buildings this month. There's been some ongoing discussions about a cleaning solution for cleaning this building and remind me, Cindy.
The fire hall.
And the fire hall, so separate from Doubleday. We are in agreement that a good way to proceed is that we advertise for a part-time employee to have that be their sole purpose at, what was it, Cindy, 19 hours a week, year round?
At $22 an hour.
At $22 an hour, just because I think that it gives us the ability to maintain some of that quality control, and it will allow us to see more return on our investment, opposed to going out to an independent agency, having an employee tasked with the responsibility. Jenna took me into her office to see the cobwebs that were hanging in there.
You're only on my side of the office, you're much neater.
So I'm being a little funny, but I just think that we we can get more out of an employee than I think we can get out of an agency. And Cindy, I didn't run the numbers. Are we saving or is it a break even?
Without a break even.
It's a great deal.
It's a break even, okay.
He's looking to meet with him tomorrow afternoon, to offer a proposal. So
Yes, a question. What is the group that's bidding now? They were here the day the elevator, yes, bidding on Sunday.
He was incredibly helpful. I can't think of the name.
It's,
is it
Cordell?
Yeah, it is Cleaning Solutions, I believe.
Oh, that's who that is.
That, it's that company, so they must have included hired, I don't know where her, if she's just someone they hire about.
I appreciate that information from Mitch.
Actually, I will say, I field a lot of inquiries and things, and I just got that like yesterday. Over the weekend, so I forwarded it to Mitch, so I think that we could go ahead and approve this contingent on Mitch's discussion with the information he's just learned, yeah. All right, so then.
That's fine, but I had a comment to make. It's peripherally related to this based on what you said. This is in all seriousness. When you get rid of the spiders, you get mice, you get flies, you get other things that are actually much worse. Be careful what you wish for because you may get it.
Cindy's got that covered with the lantern.
Yes. No, seriously, they will get the fly. I'm not being facetious, Joe.
So the thought of waiting to, or approving this contingent upon seeing their proposal is if their proposal is.
Well, we meet again in a week.
Let's
We've
call
gone a bit. We're in good shape, so I do think it leaves our options open. So was the motion amended to include, you know?
I'm fine with that, amending it to say.
I was just trying to inquire if the thought of doing that is hold on, Richard, is if it's cheaper. Is that the thought?
It's pretty much a wash. I mean, depending on what their proposal actually is, with our current solution, with our current cleaning solutions, it would be pretty.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have Cleaning Solutions, the current company has had our expectations and guidelines, and it's not a secret that it's been less than satisfactory. So I just want to make it clear that I think that having a staff person who is accountable to Mitch.
And I think Mitch will take that into consideration when he meets with them, but I think that we don't need to dictate to our DPW superintendent. I think he can use his discretion to determine.
Well, certainly, I trust Mitch's judgment.
So there's the motion. It was seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Before we do, I just had one question. What is the status of the elevator repair?
It is working perfectly fine.
Was it ever figured out what went wrong?
Well, so interestingly, when the guy came to do its regular maintenance, no one had ever reported that there was an issue.
Oh, God.
So we talked at buildings about the need for better communication between all the buildings.
But that was the tech person. The installers knew there was an issue.
Yeah, the tech person is the one who actually does the fixing. There is a communication snafu. It seems to be working just fine. It worked fine for the library program, which is fairly well attended.
We're just using
That may be true.
All right. Anything else with buildings?
No, ma'am, that's all I've got.
Motion to accept is that what you're raising your hand for? Or
I'd like the motion to accept and also thank Mr. Benton for the job he's done over the past few years as chairman of Buildings Committee.
You're here.
and here, good job.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you.
Motion made by Richard, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to finance.
So we have our debt management, LoSAP statement for your review. Finance committee reviewed the bank, completed the bank reconciliations. The A fund wasn't available for us at the time. The sales tax report again shows month over month, go up 9% and year over year about 10.5%. So we have an enhanced revenue coming in from that. It looks like that probably will for the rest of the fiscal year. We'll see. We've been through the Bank of Cooperstown presentation. We have I'd like to, and Jenna, maybe you can help me with the distinction between the two. We have an invoice for our from general code for our annual maintenance in the amount of $1,195 that I moved the payment of. And then, so I will.
Second. Enthusiastically.
Enthusiastically second, all in favor?
Aye.
Now, we also have just tonight on the table here, a general code estimate for doing supplementing the code, and that's a proposal for between $227 and $2,800. Do we need to act on that, or we just need to review it? And I'd like to know the relationship between.
The general code is the one who has always codified our law. Our E-code is through general code. And we actually got a couple years behind at one point. We got caught up with a couple, but 2002 has not been put in. There's 10 pieces of legislation. What I'm actually finding is that most of our boards. I'm sorry, 2022, I misspoke.
Look, we're going way back.
Yeah, no, we've done much better than that. Most of ours, we print copies and we pay for that. And there are printed copies of the complete code. But most people go online. So it really behooves us to make sure it's totally integrated to the online.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
what
I
they're doing.
couldn't agree. I was just trying to understand.
Yeah, yes.
So this, when we do this, so are we approving the
rate, the cost.
The cost. Well, I would move then that we approve the retention of general code to prepare our supplement to include the 2022 laws at a price between $2,710 and $2,845.
Motion made by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
See, we have some capital project invoices, Hoffman Way and Pioneer Alley Delta Engineering, invoice number 2. I move the payment of $5,626.37.
Second by Richard, all in favor?
For the Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley Delta Engineering invoice number 3, $7,542.71. I move this payment.
Second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
For Doubleday Field, Delaware Engineering, third base building bleachers, invoice number 22-2515-3, in the amount of $2,070.79. I move the payment.
Second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
We've just done the Richard with change order, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And we have a HKK for the third floor window restoration, an HKK invoice number 3619 in the amount of $1,806. I move this payment.
Second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
You have under personnel, the overtime analysis and the leave analysis. We do have the change transaction info for employees is in the treasurer's office. We do have a conference and training request for Garrett for March 29, 2023. It's going to be held here at the other side of the hotel. A good training opportunity. There's no cost, but we need to approve it. So I move the approval of that training request.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
And I move the approval of the abstracts and transfers that are set out in your packet.
All in favor?
And the change transaction info for vendors is in the treasurer's office. And I believe that is it.
Joe, did you cover these checks, Otsego County checks?
I thought those were receipts of taxes, tax payments. What am I missing?
Okay, so we just don't usually have those in there, and
We don't usually, but I noticed, aren't they?
that is the amount that was just
I believe, let me double, I believe it is, but, double check.
20, yeah, would it be about 27,392?
For a total, of- yeah, it was about 27 and then 24,000.
Yeah. All right. It's great. It was kind of interesting. I've never seen them come like that. Motion to accept the finance report
So moved.
by Max, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Grants and projects update, there will be a construction meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock on site at Doubleday Field for the final stages, the wing walls and the bleachers, etc. Window restoration, we basically covered. Grove Street culvert is just that we're holding the retaining. There's something more to say about that. Do you have an update on Hoffman Lane or Pioneer Alley?
So Delta Engineering is still working on the plans for Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley. I think the update is that using what they've done, at least Stefanik had asked for community fund requests. You had to do it, it was very bizarre, you had to do it from a Gmail account and provide a letter of support from
A Google document grant application.
from the municipal officials, so I filled it out from my Gmail account and found this funding to do the work that's being planned on Pioneer Alley as well as Willowbrook that runs underneath. I feel like it's a long shot, but
This was asked of us by the Congresswoman's office.
it was asked of anyone in her areas.
They reached out. Bassett applied for.
Yeah, other places locally.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I think it's a long shot. They have, her office officials have asked a number of pointed
Follow-up
questions.
questions. They basically market it to the appropriate agency. We could have picked a particular grant. You know, we want to go to, I don't know, in Office of the Interior or whatever, and they really refined what it was, and they would basically promote it in that way.
So her office then decides whether they're going to sponsor it at the federal level. So just because they sponsor it doesn't actually mean you're gonna get it. As I said, I just want you to know that this happened in case it comes to your attention, but.
I will point out she has delivered for Gloversville and Dolgeville. And we are for the first time in that area, in her district, and
I'm glad the Congresswoman hasn't forgotten about the southernmost tip of her congressional district. That's very reassuring.
Question about,
Blazing blue Cooperstown.
about both projects. Is there anything about, I know undergrounding is a bridge too far, but to dress up the utilities on both Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley, because they are just.
It's certainly high on my priority list for Pioneer Alley, which has been sort of like my focus, because I feel like there's a lot of public support for that.
all
particular
those wires running down there.
project.
Love to get them.
You know, if funding does come through, I think we're gonna have to have some serious meetings with property owners, you know, about all that. At least one, Rich Buzzy, who's the lines run up the side of his building and prevent him from ever painting it, is very much in favor of burial. But yeah, I mean, it's a mess.
Right. Yeah, and I think the view of coming down Hoffman Lane to draw people from
Right.
Main Street, that we could live back trees to just open up that view and
Yeah.
be a great gateway to the lake.
Yeah. So yes, I think that we have certainly told the engineers that nothing they do should prohibit that from being considered. They're not, you know, they're not electrical engineers, they're not nice, but.
Let me just, I'll add an E here, and the E is our New York Forward, 4.5 million. As you can imagine, once that announcement was made, we're very excited. We have a lot of friends in town. They all love us, and I probably fielded 8 to 10 emails from businesses. Because there were projects we included in our grant application. One of them says downtown, because one of them was Main Street facade repair, apartments on second floor housing, and as well as improved accessibility. So those are all things that people are saying, well, I've already painted my building, can I get covered? So, what really needs to be known, and, I've worked up a whole statement, everything we do with New York Forward has to be vetted. There's no process where we're kind of saying anything. And so I've written up a whole spiel, had it vetted. They made tweaked a little wording change. Our New York Forward, there'll be another drop down on our website. It'll have the original application, but it'll have this explanation. It'll have the link to the New York Forward state site, the New York state site, etc. And it'll just give sort of the process. And I know we have, George has said that he's already gotten some emails. George Fasanelli, our newest trustee, hasn't even sworn in and he's fielding emails. So once that's all up, I'm just going to give you all, when you get these, direct them to the website. At this point, everything really has to be vetted through New York State. There's nothing going out from us. Everything is being kind of dictated, but you'll see on there will be the process that everyone can be familiar with.
So is the committee, what stage of committee formation?
Names, when we did that intent to apply, when I shared that last August, and then we submitted the application in September, you remember, and then we supported it in October with a presentation. Those that was part of the application process. We did augment, they said, well, you need a few more names. So we threw some out there. It isn't us. In fact, they sort of said, well, that person can't be on it because that person's on it. They tell us who will be on this committee.
Do we have names yet?
Excuse me, we do not have it back from the state yet, no.
So the state selects people from within the community to guide the process
Yes.
Correct.
without any input from the board?
No.
From the village.
It's not their
The names were in the application.
in the application, that's what I'm saying. They were
Got it.
submitted last August with,
Thank you very much.
Right, okay. Moving on.
Yes. Okay. So two sort of things, and if there's any questions, just let me know for the minutes. The first is that Lynn Mevis has decided to step down from the Parks Board. I just wanted to put it on the record that she has been an absolutely invaluable member of our Parks Board, and just of the community in general, and I particularly would like it to be known that I don't think I would have been able to step into it without her and Jean Dewey's help. So it's a sad day to lose Lynn, but it is an exciting moment because Will Walker did step up and said he'd be interested in taking that spot. So I would love to make a motion that or not make a motion, or ask Ellen to appoint him as our new.
You can make the motion to approve my appointment of Will Walker to the Parks Committee. There you go, second by Joe, all in favor? And just to give you an idea how, I don't think Lynn will ever step fully away. I was walking my dog today, she went by me, rolled down the window and told me blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
for Fairy Spring Pavilion. I said, sounds great, Lynn. So they should, no, she'll always stay at all.
Really invaluable.
Yeah.
Second sort of point of interest, surprise, is the dog park. So I've been doing a lot of work with the help of Lynn and the help of Ron and the help of everyone, to figure out this sort of situation that we find ourselves in with this land, that's on Cooperstown Central School property. Given what Cindy had sent me, that like the easement, and I'd also talked to Jeff Katz, it looks like that property, that parcel that we were looking at, that we were hopeful for the dog park. The village does have an easement, and the only restriction is that it's for recreational use. Whatever we're putting on there is for recreational use. So that being said, you have a question?
It's just peculiar that a dog park wouldn't fall under.
No, it does fall under.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
my question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could, I mean, if someone wants to bring up why that wouldn't fall under recreational use, I'm happy to. Argue my point, but I definitely believe that a dog park, given the countless sources that I've sort of referenced, falls under this idea of recreational use. Second point of like potential clarification is that all of the plans that we have come up with are not in lieu of Cooperstown Youth Baseball coming back. It's in addition to that field. So if that were something that was a potential problem or an issue or a question, it wouldn't be one or the other. It could be both. So all of that information on the table, I wanted to bring it back to the board just to get a sense of how this idea of a dog park sits with everyone, and then also think about what those next steps might be. The Friends of the Parks are very excited about this. They've offered support. We have a little bit of a financial understanding of what something like this would cost. Both on the cheaper end and on the higher end, and something like the dog park is fantastic in that if it becomes something that is used very often, it can be invested in. So if we started with a sort of not as high end fence, we could always add to it or, increase that as we see fit. But I just wanted to get a sense of everyone's feelings and yes.
I am pro dog park. I'm all in. I think that is an incredible asset to the village. It almost makes me want to get a dog. I would be happy to.
Talk to the Susquehanna SPCA and have said that they would adopt a dog if there was a dog park, if they had a place to bring their dog, because they don't have a backyard where they can run a dog.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. That is so legitimate. There are plenty of small parcels. I have 0.08 of an acre on the corner of Delaware and Beaver Street. And as a kid, I'm far too busy for a dog. But as a kid, I wanted a dog really bad. I gotta tell you, many fights in our house over dogs. There's no space. Very convenient excuse for mom and pop. And with a dog park, that excuse is gone. I would have won the argument, so I mean.
So it is
But
great.
who's gonna walk them?
Well, that's what my parents said, Richard.
Schools are still the B&B.
Yep.
They're the schools.
According to that, what I was looking at, there's no limitation written on that easement that suggests that there's
I think
anything other than recreation.
I would just say though, that I think the village needs to confirm, because they have such a no dog policy.
And that's when I spoke with
village
them, that
project.
was their concern.
So make sure before this moves forward, that there is an agreement with the school pertaining
So,
to that.
I mean, that's part of my question is, would the next step be someone attending a school board meeting and suggesting that given this information that we know that this, the village has a permanent easement for this particular parcel for recreational use, that this is our intention, or this is something that we're thinking about pursuing?
I'd actually start with the superintendent.
Okay.
To ensure, because as you know, when I initially reached out, they said we had a no dog policy. They understand the recreational use, but there is, schools have incredible liability issues with dogs and kids and defecating on
Right.
village or on school grounds.
Yeah.
So no dogs are allowed, even on leash, to kind of.
Well, yeah, I wonder if they know that that area is being used for dogs
That's,
almost every day.
it does get used, I'm sure, but it doesn't mean it's legitimate by them.
Well, if you're proposing that you would approach the superintendent, do you want to carry with you a sense of the board that we?
I would like that. I mean, I
Is
think
a
that-
legitimate thing for us to-
I have to say that my only reservation is, I don't see this as a village project. We are wholly within the town of Otsego. So, if the village parks board takes it on themselves to work with the town of Otsego and on this project, it's in their jurisdiction. even the southern boundary extension that we were looking at doesn't incorporate this property.
Oh,
Again,
that confuses me then. Why are we even looking at it?
But how would we get access to the town?
I said that all.
Two things, it's already been something that has, because I happen to live with the supervisor of the town board, it's on their radar, and according to Wiley and the town board, it's something that's of interest and would work, depending on, their zoning laws would allow it, everything works that sense. The reason why I think it would be a village point is because we have an easement, we have a permanent easement, it's our, right?
It is our easement, but I can't see village taxpayers expending funds for. So if the town of Otsego wants to cover a dog park in the town of Otsego.
Well, hold on a second though, because sure, the easement's ours and it's in the town, but there's an obvious, vested interest here and of village residents who have endless amounts of dogs and would absolutely use this. And the only legitimate argument for a dog park in between combining it with the village and with the town of Otsego is if it is accessible and has parking for residents who are coming from farther out in the town. But if it's walkable from the village, if it's not walkable from the village, it loses huge value, I think. If it's not walkable from the village, I think would significantly impact participation and use. And what's the point of making an investment if it's not going to be continuously and consistently used?
To follow up in your point, what would the village, having an easement, what would the village have been investing in with that easement? The youth baseball?
It was youth baseball. We had taken as part of the project for the parking lots, we had taken the old baseball field.
Right.
When we did that, we discovered there were toxic problems there because it was a former garbage dump. And so we ended up having to do a very comprehensive review with DEC, and then we sealed it and put in impermeable layers. We used that soil though, as we took it down over where this new park is, but it was all sealed and made appropriate. It has special dirt there that's we put a lot of money into it. And then the Cooperstown Youth Baseball decided to go. We actually have very expensive, just like Major League Field dirt, and we put the lighting and the wires in, and once they said they weren't staying and left, it really, at that point, there's been a hope, I know, that the baseball come back,
But my only point is, if we were doing something extra territorial, invest in that field, could we not do the same as a village with respect to the dog park? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, it never came up before.
I just think you have to talk to the school board,
Yeah,
because I met with them probably a year and a half ago, and they said, we do not, our insurance will cancel. We can't have any dogs around the children. This is what they said to us when we met with them. And so I just figured, well, they're gonna be jumping all over that. And so we'll see. No harm in asking. I mean, there is virtually no harm.
I thought you hadn't, I thought you
We
did.
haven't approached it yet because our understanding was that there was no easement by the village for this parcel, right?
I think we got-
I have seen the easement for Clark, for the Clark Foundation. I have not seen the easement for the Cooperstown.
But I don't think, Sydney, that easement overrides their ownership and their use.
My concern was that it doesn't make sense for us to go to the school board with the thought that we could do anything with that property if we didn't have an easement. I didn't see the easement. So therefore, we were coming up with a way to approach the school board to sort of question this. I'm happy to talk to the superintendent, that's not an issue. And I also know that there are a lot of school board members who are in favor of this document. So
The big dilemma will be insurance.
Okay.
They're a driver always.
Yeah.
That's where.
So my thought is, can I go to the superintendent with the suggestion that the village board as a whole is willing to see this through if it works out for them? If it works out for this.
You need a poll,
Right,
basically.
yeah.
I'm a yes.
Okay.
So what is our protocol here? We've used this sense of the board before. I don't know.
It's a
I want
good-
to facilitate this, but I
I
don't know.
would say if the school is willing to override their no dog policy. And if the town of Otsego is willing to invest, again, this is something that taxpayers would. Might want to support, but there are also, there's not that many things we do outside our
You're thinking of
jurisdiction.
private funding, right?
I am.
You're gonna get private funding there.
So the Friends of the Parks are already in for fundraising for this. The biggest cost is gonna be the fence, which could cost anywhere from about $10,000 to $30,000, depending on the night. But depending on what kind of fence we want to see, right? If we want it to be in line with the fencing and sort of vision of Cooperstown, or if we just want it to be a chain link fence. The Friends of the Park are willing to put in the effort. And then they also created a secondary plan of consistent sort of, if someone wants to donate a memorial tree or a memorial bench for this space, that can be a continuing conversation. The real thought process is just the maintenance, right? And we've already come up with a plan to have as little maintenance as possible. So planting clover and like tall fescue grass, some of which is already there. You don't need to constantly maintain it. It just sort of comes back. Even copious amounts of dog urine won't really do much, which is great. And then, the other questions are just sort of trash, right? Having someone put that on the route of picking up, a dog. Obviously, there's somewhere to put dog.
You obviously
Yeah.
work through a lot of the logistics, so I think all we need to know is, will the school allow a dog park before we continue to kind of invest in? I think you've got a great plan. I know when this came up before, along Esley was also suggested in the town of Middlefield, and at that time, people said, no, because there's no place to park. So I do think, are people going to want, are people using the parking lot to get to the dog park, or are they using it to walk there?
Both, right? So.
Oh,
Similar,
definitely
yeah, it's both, yeah. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna meet with the superintendent and discuss this plan. I just want to,
It's like a sense of the, exactly.
Yeah.
Is there a sense that anybody other than you?
stepping, or that if we have this discussion and I come back and the majority of the board is just not interested, I would rather not even waste my time to talk to this.
No, 100%. I still, if the school is willing to waive their dog policy for that area. And if it's understood that it's going to be limited taxpayer for an improvement in the town of Otsego. I mean, right now, we already clean the sidewalks in the town of Otsego, on Main Street, on the bridge. We heard about that at breakfast with the board this morning, because our streets crew has to clean the town of supposedly town of Middlefield's doing one side of the bridge, town of Otsego is doing the other, and of course, it's never done. So again, it's the village having to take on responsibilities. So I'm just limiting the village responsibilities.
I was just gonna, before I forget the thought, is the official act we would be making in this is letting our easement be used for a dog park. Yeah. I mean, right, that's one thing we have to.
So the other question might be insurance, right? Since we have an easement, do we have to look into whether there's an additional rider we need to get
Probably.
for our insurance?
Yeah,
We probably need
because it's, we're doing, yeah, we probably have some involvement, so there might be some insurance issues.
And Sydney, just because I waited way too long for the salt shed. The town of Otsego planning board does not move very quickly. So at some point involving them would be useful.
Yes. Is already on the radar for everyone over there. It's constant discussions, but that is the plan. And so, okay, so I will talk to the superintendent. Pretty, okay.
That's wonderful.
I wish you well. I had a dog.
I
Loves
am
the
very
cat and the
good
dog.
at convincing
That's what I'm
people.
worried about actually with the dog park.
Most dogs, when they're together, I've taken our dog to many dog parks. And the dogs that are aggressive, once they're kind of there, just left alone, the owners aren't pulling on a chain, they usually just kind of meld together.
Dog owners are really good at knowing. Like whether or not their dog should be in the dog park, so.
We've got a bit more to cover tonight, and we'll have a short executive session, so let's, is that it for remarks? Perfect, motion to accept, I'll move that we accept the park. Next one, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to community and environment.
So we talked about a lot of fun stuff. As you will see from the minutes, there are 2 action items. Greg Klein came to us on behalf of what was known as Film Coop.
Second one isn't what we're doing, just so you know, I
Okay.
noticed you put that on there.
Yeah.
That is.
And so Film Coop has been reformulated as a nonprofit known as Film Otsego. And in order to move forward, they need us to reissue their proclamation declaring them the official film commission for the village of Cooperstown. They will be doing this for a wide number of towns and villages within our county. You should know the first whereas clause, that dollar figure is actually much higher, but I didn't look it up.
Because that's the,
Because that's the previous one we just generated.
the 2011 figures, the 2023 is higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is basically the resolution we approved 2 years ago when before it had its 501c3 status. So I'll second.
Great.
All in favor?
So I guess that's our only thing. When it came to annexation, I was just gonna ask Martin what our next.
It's a petition process and we are working with the county on the petition process.
Then there will be a resolution of the 2 boards.
After-
We're merging
After
the
a
2.
position of the.
Who owns the property? It'd be our jurisdiction.
It's our jurisdiction that we don't change the ownership.
But who is the ownership? County?
You were at the meeting,
Yeah.
there were like 5 properties.
Right.
One is the county, a second one is the village highway department, the third one's the village sort of blue lot, and then there's the train track
Okay.
and Linden Ave. Linden Ave is us, so acreage wise, we own the most, it's
Okay.
only the county is the other one.
But there's an error in the law, it's a dilemma, that we couldn't go the easy route of just passing resolution. It's gotta be by a petition process. There will be no vote. Usually when you bring petitions to accomplish an annexation, there's a vote of the people. There's no people in this. It's all tax exempt property. Means no benefit, no loss, no gain to anybody. There are some long range benefits, we think, in terms of brownfield ability with tailors right there and crossing borders. But we're gonna need to persuade the county to join us. And I think quite a few of the board members are in favor. The dilemma is as we get towards the city. For some reason in Oneonta, they're not as enamored with that concept. Don't ask me why. I think it benefits the county.
This was a curveball we got thrown at the very last minute because of the error in the state law. And really it was an error that'll take several years to correct, so.
They're working on it. We've already pointed it out.
Objections from county legislators.
That's who will have to
From the city.
approve and
But
authorize.
this was the route we were first gonna have to go. It
We
was
weren't
just
gonna
a
use-
resolution between the town of Otsego and the village, but that and the burn.
Considerations with that. No, I'll explain to the later.
Is there a motion to accept the community and environment
So moved.
by Richard, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Water and sewer, is there?
Water and sewer, Quentin Hassick took his water operator license test, kind of a oral written thing. And in the process, the DEP administrator ran a plant inspection, and both Quentin and the plant passed, so they're doing great over there. And you know, we have this project up on Irish Hill or above Irish Hill that may result in replacing our Irish Hill tank. Right now, we're kind of working with pumps, pair of pumps to keep them operating until we get a final decision on that. We want to invest in new infrastructure until we get that sorted out. So other than that, everything's fine at the water plant and at the sewer plant. You can read just a couple of items of I will move the acceptance of the water.
So by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor? Thank you. And we have new business, setting our vending date season for 2023.
I just have one thing to add. I was just making a request that they would like to add Friday to Pioneer Park. I wasn't sure why we didn't allow it on Fridays during the special.
An induction?
She didn't put, oh, classic, sorry, during classic weekend. People wanted to do Pioneer Park on Friday, and we somehow don't stipulate Fridays allowed.
Yeah, we don't really do, you know, we close double day. On, but you know, our Main Street's still open and everything. We certainly put it on Friday.
Just never done it, so I just want to make sure that was.
So I will make a motion, but it would include Friday to Monday on Memorial Day weekend, Friday to Monday on induction weekend, and Friday to Sunday on Savannah Bananas weekend, or whatever we're gonna call that. For that, would that make sense? Okay. I will make a motion to designate 3 special event weekends, May 26th to 29th, Memorial Day weekend, July 21st to 24th, induction weekend, and September 15th to 17th.
Those are the 3 event weekends for event. Is there a second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
In the motion.
What?
I didn't even.
Yeah, thank you.
And the local government award, are we applying? Are we gonna cite ourselves?
Icon has this local government achievement award, you can nominate yourself, and she said, should we nominate ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys did a great job. You guys did a phenomenal job. It should be recognized.
I'll figure it out what's required, and if it seems manageable, but I always like voting.
Caesar could write in the third person. So can we.
Yeah. If it is manageable before the deadline, I will submit an application.
I looked at the application, looked at that.
No, I just put it quick stand.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. With all our success stories. Yes. Upcoming meetings, we have our swearing in of newly elected officials and our organizational meeting and budget hearing next Monday, April 3rd at 5 p.m. And then, of course, our April 24th regular trustees meeting with the breakfast with the board at 8 a.m. that morning. Those are the upcoming. We do have, I will entertain a motion for a brief executive session to discuss legal issues before the bill. Second by Richard.
I moved it, I'll second it.
Thank you, Patty, for coming. Now, Matt is the door closer.